I'm not quite sure what that was all about, really. Isabel Oakeshott's here. Isabel, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, I would say on the face of it, that was a much stronger Starmer performance than we're used to. I was feeling pretty sceptical when he started off with the speech, and there's a lot in that speech, but he did sound at least a bit tougher than he usually does, a bit less wet.
Yeah, but it took an awfully long time to say not very much, really. I mean, are we now to believe that this assailant, this murderer, this monster is in fact a terrorist, and the only reason they couldn't call him a terrorist before is because the law said they couldn't?
That is effectively what he's saying there. So he's acknowledging the inadequacy of the law that is unable to classify him as a terrorist, even though confusingly he has pled guilty to some terror-related activities. Yeah. They can't classify him as a terrorist because they were unable to find an ideology. That's the letter of the law. So he says on the one hand he's going to change the law. He also makes some very sweeping statements with regard to what's available on the internet, and I think that will be very difficult to actually deliver. He's talking about, how is it that people can view, unfettered, horrible, violent stuff online? Well, nice sentiments, but good luck kind of becoming the world's policeman for the internet. I think that the victims' families, clearly I don't speak for them, but I think that they may not be particularly happy to hear their names used in this way. He tried to hold them up as an example of how we should comport ourselves in the wake of this terrible, terrible crime. Those victims' families are pretty angry with Keir Starmer on a number of levels. And if you talk to them, they will say, well, where is he? Where was he? He came to visit us. He didn't write to us. There was very, very little.
Well, he talks about a lot of empathy in this country, a lot of empathy in Southport. Well, there was no empathy when he went to Southport, refused to talk to the residents, and refused to talk to the people there, and just simply put down a wreath, turned around and walked away.
They are very angry with him and with Yvette Cooper. They feel that it's been very, very shabbily, shoddily handled. Starmer was very interesting too about the atmosphere of mistrust of authorities. He's on the back foot here, trying to justify what many perceive to have been a gigantic cover-up. And he made a powerful case that he couldn't have said more earlier. The government couldn't have said more because it might have derailed the trial. Well, some people will take that and some people won't take that. But where I think he's on the weakest grounds is these sweeping pledges that he's going to do whatever it takes to ensure nothing like this can ever happen again, talking about if there's anything that can be done to root out, the dangers faced by our children, then he'll do it. Well, let me give him a couple of very simple examples. Deport foreign criminals. He's not done that. It's an obvious way to keep our children safer. Stop the boats coming over full of people we don't know who they are. To be clear, in this case, Axel Rudakubana was not an illegal immigrant, but Keir Starmer has broadened this out, saying that he wants to stop anything that may make our children less safe. Well, there are a couple of primary examples. He's had 9 months. He hasn't stopped either of those things.
Right, exactly. And he says it's not about immigration. Well, actually, it is about immigration, because in this case and several other cases of violence and extremism and terrorism, quite frankly, there was the stabbing up in the northeast of England to death of a man by somebody else because of what had happened on October the 7th in Gaza, and this boy, when he was 17, called a boy, now a man of 18, when he committed the crime, he came here as a result of immigration. Well, he was born here as a result of immigration. And the point is that, people are not stupid. People will make those connections.
Yes, I mean, as it happens in this case, Axel Rudakubana was born in Britain, though his family, likely much traumatised, were refugees to the UK, and who knows what difficulties they brought from Rwanda, where they'd fled the genocide, what trauma they'd been through and how that affected his upbringing. And I think there'll be much more to come out about the Rudakubana family in coming days and what they could have done more to prevent their son from committing this absolute horror. So, yes, Keir Starmer had to make this speech. He did his very, very best to put as robust a face on it as he could over what has undoubtedly been the most incredibly controversial handling of this horror. And I think he's made a bunch of pledges that he isn't even going to be remotely able to deliver, nor does he actually have the will to deliver.
Right. And he said that there was no cover-up. He also said that there were things that he couldn't say. He then said that the most important thing is transparency. You know, none of those three things can operate in the same room. At the end of the day, he withheld information. He can justify that if he wishes by saying that if he had let that information out, that would have maybe risked the collapse of the trial. But you and I have done this for a long time in this game, and there are plenty of things that could have been said about this trial and about the detail of the individual concerned without the trial collapsing.
Of course. I mean, I don't think the evidence in this case was particularly flimsy, was it?
Right.
You know, it wasn't as if prosecutors were going to have a very hard time proving who did this awful thing,
right,
as if there weren't multiple witnesses and so on and so forth. So I think we can all understand the whole thing about not prejudicing a trial, but basic things could have been said earlier. And if it was possible to tell the public a few months ago about the terror dimension, why wasn't it possible to tell the public about that back in August when they first knew about it?
Yeah. Exactly right. And, you know, I know that because he was 17, there was a delay in the release of his name. But why release a picture of him as a child rather than the picture that we now see? You know, these are all questions for the police. I understand that. But these are all questions for the system, which he purports to be inside and out because he was once a public prosecutor, which he doesn't mention very often. You know, there's all sorts of reasons why this was badly handled, and he's not going to get away with it. The reaction from my listeners and viewers right now is that the only mention he made of Islam was not in a negative way, that this guy was radicalised by some Al-Qaeda operator's manual, but he mentioned the fact that the people who had their mosque, you know, kind of attacked managed to come together and help each other. You know, that's the only mention of Islam here, and he needs to do better, frankly.
Well, I won't get into the Islam thing because I don't know, and hopefully will come out in coming days, to what extent he was following very radical preachings rather than sort of mainstream Islam most respectful people have. But let me just talk about that photograph. Absolutely, I want to know, why did they release a cute choir boy, schoolboy picture? What the heck was that all about? Axel Rudakubana was not a cute little schoolboy when he committed this absolute horror. He was the person that you see on our screens now. Frankly, he looks demonic, and demonic is what he was when he carried out those murders. Why did the authorities try to present him as something he wasn't? And can they accept that that is what leads to an atmosphere of mistrust from people when they know they're being misled? They feel it. They feel that something isn't right here. Yeah. They knew that what they were really dealing with, what we are really having to face the consequences of, is a young person who looks like that picture, not a cute little choir boy. And we now know that time and again, Axel Rudakubana had crossed the radar more than of the authorities. He had been referred to programs which are designed to prevent terror outrages. And more than once, more than twice, 3 times, those so-called experts in charge of those multi-million-pound programs decided that Axel Rudakubana wasn't that much of a risk.
Incredible, isn't it? Absolutely incredible. Isabel, we've got to let it go there. Thank you.